Mary Slessor was a Scottish missionary who spent much of her life in Nigeria, where she worked tirelessly to promote Christianity, improve the lives of the local people, and challenge harmful cultural practices. Mary Slessor was born on December 2, 1848, in Gilcomston, Aberdeen, Scotland, and became one of the most renowned missionaries of her time, dedicating her life to serving the people of Nigeria. Mary Slessor grew up in Scotland, but her family moved to Dundee when she was a young girl due to financial difficulties. Dundee is where she spent much of her childhood and early adulthood. Life in Dundee was challenging for the Slessor family, as they lived in poverty. Mary began working in a textile mill at the age of 2 to help support her family. Despite these hardships, Dundee was where she developed her strong Christian faith and sense of purpose, which eventually led her to become a missionary. Her experiences in Dundee shaped her resilience and compassion, qualities that defined her later work in Nigeria. Mary Slessor, the Scottish missionary, received her education at Dundee Industrial School, a free school for poor children. The Dundee Training College for Schoolmasters and Mistresses, where she trained as a teacher. Mary Slessor's education was largely influenced by her Christian faith and her desire to serve as a missionary. Mary Slessor's formal education was quite limited due to her family's poverty, but had to leave at the age of 11 to work in a textile mill to help support her family. Despite her lack of formal higher education, she was an avid reader and largely self-taught, which helped her develop the skills and knowledge she later used in her missionary work. Mary Slessor did not attain a traditional, highest education, in the sense of university degrees or advanced schooling. Instead, her education came through life experiences, self-study, and her deep commitment to her faith and mission work. Her practical wisdom, adaptability, and dedication to learning the languages and customs of the people she served in Nigeria were key to her success as a missionary. However, she later went on to study medicine and midwifery, which prepared her for her work in Africa. Mary Slessor's parents were Robert Slessor and Mary Mitchell Slessor. Robert Slessor, originally from Buchan, was a shoemaker by trade. He struggled with alcoholism, which contributed to the family's financial difficulties and instability. Mary Mitchell Slessor is from Old Meldrum, and was a deeply religious woman of sweet disposition, had a keen interest in missionary work in the Calabar region of Nigeria. She was a devout Christian and a strong influence on Mary Slessor's faith and character. Despite the family's hardships, she instilled in her children a deep sense of religious commitment and moral values. The Slessor family faced significant challenges, including poverty and Robert's alcoholism, which led them to move from Aberdeen to Dundee in search of better opportunities. Mary Slessor's upbringing in such a difficult environment likely contributed to her resilience, compassion, and determination, qualities that later defined her missionary work in Nigeria. Mary Slessor died in 1915 in Nigeria, having led hundreds to Christ. Mary Slessor never married and did not have any known romantic relationships. Her life was entirely dedicated to her missionary work and the people she served in Nigeria. She lived a celibate life, fully committed to her faith and her mission. Although she did not have a spouse or children of her own, Mary Slessor was known for her maternal care and compassion. She adopted several Nigerian children, including twins who had been abandoned due to the local superstition that twins were cursed. She treated these children as her own and raised them with love and care, earning her the affectionate nickname, Mother of All the Peoples, among the communities she served. Her relationships were primarily built around her missionary work, her adopted family, and local people in Nigeria, with whom she formed deep bonds of trust and mutual respect. Her legacy is one of selflessness, dedication, and a profound commitment to improving the lives of others. Slessor arrived in Nigeria in 1876 and quickly learned the local languages and customs, which helped her gain the trust of the communities she served. She lived among the people, often in remote areas, and adopted several children, including twins who had been abandoned. Her work extended beyond evangelism. She also mediated conflicts, provided medical care, and advocated for women's rights. Mary Slessor's dedication and compassion earned her the nickname, Mother of All the Peoples, in Nigeria. She is celebrated as a pioneering figure in missionary work and a symbol of humanitarianism. Her legacy continues to be honored in both Scotland and Nigeria. She is particularly remembered for her efforts to stop the killing of twins, which was a common practice among the Efik people at the time due to the belief that twins were evil. Mary Slessor began her missionary in Calabar, in the present-day Nigeria, by the United Presbyterian Church's Foreign Mission Board. She was 28 years old at the time. Her decision to become a missionary was inspired by her strong Christian faith and her desire to serve others, despite her humble background and limited formal education. Slessor's early years in Nigeria were challenging, as she had to adapt to a completely different culture, climate, and way of life. However, she quickly learned the local languages and customs, which helped her gain the trust of the people she served. Over time, she became deeply involved in the communities, working to spread Christianity, improve living conditions, and challenge harmful practices such as the killing of twins. Mary Slessor's missionary career spanned nearly 4 decades, during which she became one of the most respected. She left behind a lasting legacy of compassion and dedication. Mary Slessor is celebrated for her humanitarian work, particularly in promoting women's rights and ending harmful practices such as the killing of twins. While she did not receive formal awards in the modern sense, her contributions were widely recognized and honored in various ways. Recognition by the British Empire. Although she did not receive a formal title, her work was acknowledged by British authorities and local communities in Nigeria. Legacy and honors. Numerous schools, churches, and institutions in Nigeria and Scotland are named after her. She is commemorated in statues and plaques, including one in Calabar, Nigeria, and another in her hometown of Aberdeen, Scotland. Posthumous recognition. Her story has been celebrated in books, documentaries, and other media, highlighting her impact on missionary work and social reform. In 1953, a ship named MV Mary Slessor was launched in her honor. Mary Slessor's legacy is primarily one of cultural and social impact, rather than formal awards, as her work focused on grassroots change and advocacy. Mary Slessor, a Scottish missionary who spent most of her life in Nigeria, was not known for accumulating wealth. Her life was dedicated to humanitarian work, particularly in advocating for women's rights, ending harmful practices like the killing of twins, and promoting education and healthcare. As a missionary, she lived modestly and relied on support from missionary societies and donations. Slessor's focus was on serving others rather than personal financial gain, so her net worth at the time of her death in 1915 was negligible by modern standards. Her true wealth lies in her enduring legacy of social reform, her impact on the communities she served, and the recognition she received for her humanitarian efforts. Mary Slessor lived during the time when cars and motorized vehicles were not widely available, especially in remote areas like Calabar, Nigeria, where she spent most of her missionary work. During her time, transportation in Nigeria primarily relied on walking, canoes, and occasionally horses or carts in more developed areas. Slessor was known for her incredible endurance and often traveled long distances on foot through difficult terrain to reach remote villages. Her lifestyle was simple and focused on her mission work, so she did not own or used cars or motorized vehicles. Instead, she adapted to the local modes of transportation and lived in a way that aligned with the communities she served. Mary Slessor, the Scottish missionary, lived in various locations throughout her life, primarily in Scotland and Nigeria. Here are the key places where she resided. She spent her early childhood in Gilcomston, Aberdeen, Scotland. When Mary was 11, her family moved to Dundee due to financial difficulties. She worked in the mills there and became involved in the local church, which sparked her interest in missionary work. Mary Slessor moved to Nigeria in 1876 as a missionary under the United Presbyterian Church, later part of the Church of Scotland. She lived in several locations in Nigeria, primarily in the Calabar region, now part of Cross River State. Some of her notable residences in Nigeria include Duke Town. Calabar was her first base when she arrived in Nigeria. She later moved to Old Town, Calabar, and began her work among the Efik people. She spent time at Creek Town, continuing her missionary and humanitarian efforts. In 1888, Slessor moved to Okoyin, a remote and challenging area where she worked for 15 years. She lived in a mud hut and became deeply involved in the community, advocating against harmful practices like twin killings and promoting education. Later in her life, she expanded her work to Orochukwu and other areas, focusing on peace building and community development. Mary Slessor's residences were often simple and adapted to the local environment, reflecting her commitment to living among the people she served. She spent nearly 4 decades in Nigeria, leaving a lasting legacy of social reform and humanitarian work. Mary Slessor, a Scottish missionary to Nigeria, dedicated her life to humanitarian and charitable work, particularly in the Calabar region, now part of Cross River State, Nigeria. Her endeavors were transformative and focused on improving the lives of the local people, especially women and children. Also, her missionary achievements were remarkable and had a profound impact on the communities she served in Nigeria. Here are some of her key accomplishments. Ending the killing of twins. One of her most significant achievements was to fight to stop the killing of twins among the Efik and other tribes in Calabar. Twins were considered cursed, and it was a common practice to abandon or kill them. Slessor rescued and adopted many twins, providing them with care and shelter, and worked tirelessly to change this harmful superstition. Promoting women's rights. Slessor challenged the marginalization of women in Nigerian society. She advocated for women's rights, including their right to education, property ownership, and participation in community decision-making. Her efforts helped empower women and improve their social status. Mediating conflicts. Slessor acted as a peacemaker and mediator in local disputes, often resolving conflicts between tribes or villages. Her fair and compassionate approach earned her the trust and respect of the people, and she was often called upon to settle disagreements. Spreading Christianity. She played a key role in spreading Christianity in Nigeria, particularly in the Calabar region. She established churches, schools, and mission stations, and her work helped lay the foundation for the growth of Christianity in the area. Improving healthcare and education. Slessor provided basic medical care to the communities she served, often treating illnesses and injuries herself. She also established schools to educate children, emphasizing the importance of literacy and learning. Cultural adaptation and advocacy. Unlike many missionaries of her time, Slessor immersed herself in the local culture, learning the languages and customs of the people. This allowed her to communicate effectively and build strong relationships with the communities. She also advocated for the preservation of positive aspects of local culture while challenging harmful practices. Expanding missionary work. Slessor ventured into remote and previously unreached areas, including the Okoyin and Aro regions, where she established new mission stations. Her willingness to live in these challenging environments demonstrated her dedication and courage. Adopting and caring for orphans. Slessor adopted and cared for numerous orphaned and abandoned children, including twins and other vulnerable individuals. She provided them with a loving home and education, ensuring they had a chance at a better life. Peace building and conflict resolution. Slessor acted as a mediator in conflicts between local tribes and with British colonial authorities. Her deep understanding of local customs and her reputation for fairness made her a trusted figure. She helped negotiate peace and prevent wars, often putting herself at great personal risk. Infrastructure development. Slessor encouraged the construction of roads and other infrastructure to improve access to remote areas, facilitating trade, communication, and the spread of education and healthcare. Mary Slessor's work earned her the nickname, Mother of All the Peoples, in Nigeria. She is remembered as a pioneering missionary who combined evangelism with humanitarian efforts, leaving a lasting legacy of compassion, courage, and social change. Her achievements continue to inspire missionaries and humanitarian workers worldwide. Mary Slessor's charitable endeavors left a lasting impact on the communities she served. Her work not only saved lives but also transformed cultural practices and improved the social and economic conditions of many people. She is remembered as a pioneer of humanitarianism and a symbol of selfless service. Her legacy continues to inspire missionary and charitable work worldwide.